It's update time, and this is pretty overdue because it's been a long time since I've made an update video out here. We've actually raced twice since the last update video. Last night was May 18th, and we actually raced on April 27th. And I had recorded an update video on that race, but it never got uploaded to YouTube because there were some statistic mistakes I made during that video, and there were just a couple things that I wanted to change on it and add in. And no discredit to Kelly, she had everything compiled and ready to rock and roll, but I needed to sit down and re-record a few things and make some changes, and I never got to it. So that stuff just sat around on the computer. And when you get so far away from when the actual race was, I kind of feel like some of the update stuff is just irrelevant. So it never got uploaded. And then we had a rain out after that. And then the weekend after that, we went on vacation. It was kind of a little impromptu vacation. Ended up going south to visit some family, and we're into roller coasters pretty heavily, and made a little short amusement park road trip to catch some rides that we haven't ridden yet. Some people were kind of shocked that we weren't at the track. Kind of bummed me out because it was looking like a rain out, but they ended up running anyway. And I was kind of disappointed to miss out on those points because at the time I was first in points, and it bumped me down to third after missing that race. Um, let's see, that May 27th race, that last race we were actually in, I will say I started the feature on the front row outside, and Cordell was on the inside, and he pretty much ran away with it. I mean, I struggled for a couple laps, kind of stayed with him a little bit, but he got up in the high line, ran his groove, and just walked away with it. And I was farting around in the middle line and the low line, and my car wasn't working that well. Last night's race was pretty good. Cordell had won 2 races in a row, so he had to actually start from the tail. And we had a couple other cars show up that I knew were fast. So it was going to be an interesting night. Alex started first row outside in heat number 1, and he did pretty good. He led every single lap except for the last lap. He ended up sliding up a little too high coming out of turn 2, got into the rough stuff, and back of his car hopped around a little bit, and Landon squeaked past him, and he just barely lost that lead for that race. But it was a good race. I started second row inside in heat 2 next to Cordell, and ended up, I think I led like the first lap, but it was apparent to me in hot laps and my heat race that my car was stupid loose. I mean, the back end would try to wrap around in 3 and 4 almost every lap. It's pretty much what my old car, my first season racing, was doing. That car was like watching a modified go around the corners, and that's no bueno. When you lose all the momentum in these cars in the corners, that's when people pass you, and that's pretty much what happened. I struggled, and I kept second place, but it was a struggle to keep the car in one piece. I ended up, there was a couple times going into 3 and 4 that I went sideways, went full lock to the right, and then back full lock to the left again, and then tried to power my way back out of it. And then there was a couple times in 1 and 2 where I would go in and everything would feel all right, but then the car would start scrubbing off a lot of speed. And to kind of compensate for that, you can just straighten your wheels out and drive straight out of the corner. And it took me up to the wall. And I think there was one point where I was doing that and the car got a little bit loose, and I think I tail whipped Brody. I'm not sure exactly what happened with that, but I think he broke after that. That was, I think, the only damage my car received this weekend, which it shoved this bumper in. That's just little cosmetic stuff. I'll say my car does do really well on the low line, but that's not always the right move to make. When I'm racing against two or three cars to the right of me, I'll stay down there and I'll plug my way through. But when I've got open air in front of me and I can choose wherever I want to be, I should be up on the high line because that high line is working for pretty much everyone. After watching those super late models run out there, which was a really cool show, like watching those guys in the wing sprints out there, they're fast. And Tyler Erb was ripping the high line the whole way around, and he won the thing. And watching that feature, I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to try that high line. And of course, come feature time, I ended up screwing around in the middle. My car felt pretty decent on the high line, but I will say between my heat race and the feature, I ended up making a change to try and tighten it up a little bit. And I put a humongous tire on the left rear. So it's the same diameter as the front tire on the left front. Usually we're running real small tires back there, but it definitely made a difference in tightening the car up. I could hit the corners a little bit harder, maintain a little bit more speed, but I could still feel the car scrubbing the momentum off in the corners. And 3 and 4, it still would just snap oversteer. I still don't know what the deal with that is. So I actually may play around with some tire size changes in the rear of this car to kind of help with that. I mean, that's what really cost me the race this weekend is car oversteering, losing a whole bunch of momentum, and kind of jumping around here. So I ended up finishing second to Cordell. Alex finished second in his heat to Landon, just barely. So both of us were in the redraw. I redrew number 1. So I ended up starting on the pole. Alex drew a 10. So Alex started right behind me, and Landon started to the right of me, and Jack Flume was behind him. Knowing my gear ratio is different than probably half the field, I wanted to start kind of slow, and we've got the same gear ratio as Landon, so we had to make a decision if we were going to go fast or slow. And I started to slow down, and Landon took off like a bat out of hell. Just the tiniest little jump on me, but I kind of drag raced him turn 1, and it was pretty good racing for like I think 2 laps, and then all of a sudden I just heard pop 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 pop, and then Landon fell off, and ended up something happened with his car. And he was out from there. Then we had a restart, and I had a pretty good run. I set a good speed and probably put a car on Alex, who was behind me, and did a couple good laps. But then I ended up really starting losing it in turn 3 when I was hitting it a little bit too fast. And every time I would do that, the field would catch up to me pretty quick. And that happened for a few laps, and the gap got closer and closer and closer. And then eventually, at one point, Jack Flume slipped past me on the top line, and then pretty much just ran away from me from there. Brian Pollitt got open air after fighting through a little bit of traffic, and then just started pouring it on. I mean, he was running the bottom line and caught up to us pretty quick. And him and Alex were racing pretty good. I think it was the white flag lap. We ended up catching up to some lap traffic, and I kind of started to send the car in low, and then that car went low. So at the last second, I kind of went high, and I think Pollock kind of got caught up behind that car. But that was like the front stretch at that point, and it was Alex and him making a drag race to the finish line, and Alex beat him by 4/100ths of a second. I mean, it was just barely sneaked past him. It was pretty good. After all that, after missing the last race, I am in second place now in points, and it's like 180 points behind Cordell. And then I'm only 10 points ahead of Landon, so it's tight. Alex is fourth in points currently, and he has finished third place in the last 3 races in a row. So we're anything but inconsistent. I'll say that. The next race for us is actually June 22nd, and the boss sprints will be back for that race. So, kind of excited about that. When those guys are in town, it's always pretty good racing out there. That being said, we've got a pretty decent amount of time now between today and the next race. And the plan is to probably sand Alex's car down, fix the body up a little bit, repaint it, and then get it wrapped because he's been overdue for a wrap for quite a while now. I mean, his current one is pretty well faded. And I don't even know what to do about the snap oversteer in my car. I talked to another racer a bit about suspension a couple days ago, and he told me that a lot of people overthink the suspension setup game, and I am definitely in that ballpark. I've taken a lot of advice from other people that ended up being crap, and a lot of stuff I've read online, and not taking into consideration that some of these guys' setups that work so great are on tracks that are vastly different than the track that I'm racing on. And I'm just about ready to set this whole thing up with stock suspension and then adjust from there. It's probably the right way to do it here because cloning this setup on my old car and putting it on this car has not worked. Another thing that I noticed is this fender is curled under again, which means I've been setting it down on this tire pretty hard enough to bend the metal, and there's still not enough clearance here. I don't run a bump stop in that strut, but I think I might have to. But a lot of the successful guys don't, and I'm kind of torn because I like the width of this tire. I don't mind the height. I just can't find a tire that'll fit under here without rubbing, without shrinking it drastically and changing my gear ratio. So I have some figuring out to do on that. But that pretty much sums up this last race. Another thing that someone had mentioned, wanted to know what happened to our old trailer, and we actually sold it to Alex's cousin. He's into drift racing, and he's got a Miata with a supercharged 3800 out of I think a Grand Prix GTP, and it's attached to I'm pretty sure an AR5 5-speed, so it's rear-wheel drive. That thing's a ripper, and he bought that trailer to take it to drift events, so it's still within the automotive community, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, got some time off. We're probably going to make Alex's car look a little bit better. I'm going to play around with my suspension a little bit, and then if we've got any extra time, I might actually start trying to get my old car ready for the Enduro, because I know that's going to be the one I'm going to drive in it. and then maybe even start building another compact, because I've got 3 cars here that need building. I've got 2 cage kits, so pretty sure the next car that we're going to build, I have a gutted '04 Cavalier in the back of the barn, just ready for a cage. I've got a full Dickinson cage, every bell and whistle, and I've borrowed a lot of parts from that car already, suspension and body panels. So I'm probably going to take all the Z24 stuff off of that car, which has a little bit of rust in the rear frame rails. Not terrible, but I like that bumper setup a lot. So I'm probably going to put that on the silver car in the back, get a cage in it, and then start putting an engine together for that. So I don't know how many of these cars I'm going to want to keep around, because we already have too many of them. So once the new one gets built, there's a good chance I'll probably end up putting my old car up for sale. So if anyone's remotely interested in that, I guess shoot me a message sometime. But that's pretty much that for the update situation. See you guys in the next video.